Iran says it would not allow the U.S. to determine when the two countries go to war or make peace, as 4 consecutive nights without new exchanges of fire raised hopes that Qatar and Pakistan-led mediation could revive the collapsed interim agreement. Foreign Ministry spokesman Ismail Bakay said at his weekly press briefing on Monday that, quote, any decision on future talks would be based solely on Iran's national interests and that Tehran would continue defending itself for as long as necessary. Earlier, Bakay acknowledged that Tehran and Washington were still exchanging messages, but said U.S. military actions had destroyed the conditions for meaningful negotiations. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump told reporters on Monday that Iran had requested talks through intermediaries and directly, claiming Tehran was willing to negotiate because of military pressure it had faced. Trump, however, warned the U.S. will return to a wide-scale military operation should current talks fail. The Strait of Hormuz, through which roughly 1/5 of the world's traded oil and gas passed before Iran effectively closed it following the start of the war on 28 February, remains the central sticking point in any settlement. Iran's position is that it holds sovereign authority over the waterway and may designate approved transit routes, a claim the US, Gulf states, and most of the international community reject under the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea.
Firefighters in Spain and France are working around the clock before another heatwave approaches. The huge fire near Bordeaux in the southwestern region of Gironde, which has forced hundreds of thousands of people to evacuate, remains stable Tuesday morning. But with soaring temperatures incoming in combination with the ocean breeze, officials warned that the blaze could reignite. French President Emmanuel Macron said the second major fire in the Landes region further south was contained but also remained a threat. Firefighters in Spain also experienced a quieter night battling wildfires west of Madrid, but similarly here, the coming hours will be decisive as temperatures begin to rise again. In total, more than 300,000 people have been forced to flee their homes in the two countries, making it one of Europe's largest evacuation operations in decades. Meanwhile, in Portugal, several fires broke out in the north and the centre of the country. Over 1,000 firefighters are tackling the blazes. The European Union has activated its emergency response system to support France and Spain. But with extreme conditions looming in other countries across Europe, Crisis Management Commissioner Hadj El Habib warned that the fires are out of the bloc's capacity and that resources could soon be needed elsewhere.
The UK's new Prime Minister Andy Burnham met with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky in the southern coastal city of Portsmouth on Monday. During the meeting, Burnham vowed to make good on all of London's long-term commitments to Kyiv from his predecessor Keir Starmer's era and pledged continued unwavering support to the country in its war against Russia since it was invaded in 2022. Speaking to local media about the meeting, Burnham said the UK stands ready to support Ukraine through its needs this upcoming winter, most importantly, defense missiles.
That was a big item of discussion today, the whole question of anti-ballistic missiles and the supply of them to Ukraine, particularly in terms of Ukraine protecting critical national infrastructure during the winters that can be very harsh in Ukraine. So we talked at length about that issue. I intend to visit soon, and we will build this, and we will work through the different issues that President Zelensky has, many of which we've gone into today.
Zelensky praised Burnham for his country's continued support and for selecting him as the first foreign leader to host since taking office last week.
I'm honored to be the first foreign leader to visit the UK since Andy took office, and we truly appreciate this. Our relationship with the UK is stronger than ever, and I thank Andy for his commitment to this partnership and for giving so much attention to defense and to our security. And defense and security are never just words.
Burnham described the meeting with Zelensky as very warm, reassuring Ukrainians that political change domestically will not disrupt bilateral ties with Kyiv. Zelensky is set to travel to Washington on Tuesday, where he'll meet with his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump for high-stakes talks at the Oval Office. The United States launched a review of its military presence in Europe on Monday, following through on announcements made by President Trump months ago following spats with several European leaders. Trump said the measure was not related to disagreements with leaders, but rather a move designed to ensure Europe pushes forward and takes primary responsibility over its defense. That sentiment was again echoed by the U.S. Undersecretary of Defense Elbridge Colby, who revealed that the initiative had begun in a post on X. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth earlier warned European allies in a NATO meeting of defense chiefs in June of Washington's intentions to pull troops. It remains unclear where the U.S. will maintain personnel presence and where the slashes will come, as Hegseth vaguely noted at the time that, quote, some countries will fail and others will pass with flying colors. Germany, Spain, and Italy, all whom Trump sparred with their leaders, were nations where the U.S. announced plans to reduce its presence. The review, which has not been detailed how long it will take, may announce further cuts as the Trump administration continues to endorse a critical view of its European allies.
At Berlin's Brandenburg Gate, a makeshift memorial is drawing residents who have come to pay tribute to the victims of Saturday's attack near the city's annual Pride event. As the city copes with the aftermath, some have expressed frustration that authorities failed to prevent the tragedy. The suspect, Abdul Balut, who killed one woman and injured 29 others as he plowed a van through a crowd before slashing away at people with a machete, was already known to authorities.
Ich denke schon, ein bisschen schon, ja, dass der Staat nicht richtig reagiert hat, weil die haben es ja schon mit einem Verbrecher zu tun gehabt. Ja? Und die hätten schon eher eingreifen müssen.
Prosecutors said the suspect had previous convictions for causing bodily harm, extortion, and robbery, and had attempted to join the IS group in Syria. Politicians across the political spectrum were quick to denounce the attack and call for tougher measures against extremists. At the same time, members of Berlin's LGBTQ community have warned against allowing the far right to exploit the tragedy.
Einfach, dass die Ängste und Sorgen ernst genommen werden. Also es wird seit Jahren, wird die Queer Community, aber auch Flinterpersonen immer nur genutzt, wenn man Hass schüren kann gegen Ausländer oder Migranten oder den Islam oder sonst was, und dass man auch zuhört, wenn wir nicht gerade im Fokus sind aufgrund so eines Anschlags, sondern auch, wenn wir einfach so laut sind und so unseren Mund aufmachen.
Saturday's attack marked the first time Berlin's LGBTQ community has been targeted in such a way in a city long known for its openness.
The European Union must accelerate the deployment of renewable energy and heat pumps to secure true energy sovereignty, according to a report by the Institute for Energy Economics and Financial Analysis. The think tank calculated that scaling up wind, solar, and heat pumps displaced 8.8 billion cubic meters of LNG in 2024, which is equivalent to 2/3 of the EU's imports from Qatar that year. Meeting 5-year targets of 4 million heat pumps, 75 gigawatts of solar, and 22 gigawatts of wind annually could cut EU gas demand by 25% by 2030. However, replacing Russian pipeline gas with US and Qatari LNG merely shifted vulnerability, as EU LNG imports rose 84% between 2021 and 2025 amidst Middle East instability. Reaching targets remain challenging, as clean energy accounted for 26.2% of EU energy consumption in 2025, far below the 42.5% target for 2030. At the same time, analysts warn that accelerating clean energy could trade fossil fuel reliance for supply chain dependence on China, which controls key manufacturing for solar, batteries, and heat pumps as a rising electrostate.
Mercedes-Benz shares rose by more than 5% in Frankfurt on Tuesday morning. The German carmaker reported second quarter operating profit of 1.55 billion euros, up 22% from 1.27 billion euros a year earlier. However, revenue fell by 3%. The company's overall performance was boosted by its vans and financial services businesses. However, adjusted operating profit at its core cars division fell by 26%. Mercedes-Benz blamed the decline in earnings at its car division on tougher market conditions, particularly in China. Sales of fully electric Mercedes-Benz cars increased by 51% year-on-year, driven by growth of 87% in Europe. Overall car sales climbed by 4% in Europe and by 10% in the United States. This partly offset a 30% decline in China, where intense competition, subdued demand and changes across the company's model range continued to affect sales. Excluding China, global car sales increased by 2% year-on-year.
A delegation of rabbis from across the Muslim world met Qatar's emir on Monday to offer condolences following the death of the father emir, Sheikh Hamad bin Khalifa Al Thani. After the meeting, Rabbi Mendy Hitrick told Euronews the delegation also wanted to thank Qatar's leadership for its support of the country's Jewish community.
We felt very, very welcomed at the emir's presence today. Sitting with the emir, hearing the words of comfort, hearing the words of friendship and feeling of brotherhood that has always existed. And sometimes, at times of war, at times of conflict, that is when friendship is tested. And being here at this time and showing that we support our friends, partners here in Qatar.
The Alliance of Rabbis in Islamic States represents rabbis serving Jewish communities in 18 Muslim-majority countries. Hitrick says those communities continue to demonstrate how Jews and Muslims can live side by side. He says moments of dialogue between leaders and communities remain essential to building trust across the region.
Peace is not only between governments. Peace starts between people and people-to-people relationship. If your heart is open, the person in front of you sees it. And it is really depends on each and every one of us to really open our heart to the other.
Speaking after his meeting with the emir, Hitrick said continued engagement between religious leaders and local communities offers hope for stronger Muslim-Jewish relations despite ongoing regional tensions.